Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We've talked before about the T word, and that is trauma. And it's my belief that we've all gone through some trauma. Little ones from childhood, could be somebody bullied you on the playground, or major traumas like abuse and things like that. But to move your life forward, you have to heal from all of them. And how do you do that? There's many different ways. Some of them involve tools, and we're going to talk about that today with somebody that helps people unleash their potential. She's an amazing life coach and counselor. I call her an expert on people dealing with traumas, and she's back with us. Jessica Rebelo is on the program. Welcome. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So when we talk about these tools, this is potentially or can be outside of talking with a counselor or a therapist?
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially when it comes to healing from trauma, sometimes people aren't ready to just like jump in and meet with a life coach or jump in and meet with a counselor. And I think there's ways to heal that people don't necessarily know about. They think like, in order to heal, I have to go work with someone or I have to go to a professional. And I think there's tons of things that you could do outside of that. For those people who don't believe in therapy, or those people who don't want to go to a therapist, or they're not ready for a therapist, etc.
When you do go to a therapist or counselor, you still have to do the work yourself as well. It's not like you just walk in and for those, call it, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is, you walk out, everything's great. It's magical. I'll see you in a week. There's work to be done. And part of that is I'm sure with these tools. But you have to want to make the change. And I think I've said this before, everything is work, in my opinion. Everything is work. I don't mean that in a negative way. Making plans for the weekend. We're going to hang out with, like 4 or 5 different people. Got to text them, make sure the time is right for everybody. Where are we going to go? Don't forget to, there's a cover charge, whatever. It's work. You have to do it. Breathing, meditation. It's breath work, because when you put in the work, no matter what it is, you reap the rewards. Even with your job, you work hard, maybe you'll make more money, whatever it might be. So these tools, what are we talking about here?
So I think when it comes to trauma, I always say like there's like different steps that are involved. And these are tools that I teach in my sessions, because I agree with you. Like it's not just the 45, 60-minute session when a client is with me. It's like, what are you doing outside of my sessions, and what are you doing to heal throughout the week? So I always say it's in steps. And I always say the first step is when someone goes through a trauma, or when a trauma occurs to us, or we experience it, what happens first is like our bodies get affected the most, right? So like our bodies become unsafe within our own skin and within the world around us. So I always say like we have to first teach our body safety. And what I mean by that is like something so simple and so silly, but it's things that we don't think about, is like, if you have to use the restroom, listen to your body and go use the restroom immediately. If you're hungry, listen to your body and feed yourself something immediately. So it's like listening to the body's cues of when it's telling us it needs something and responding to it right away, to show your body like, hey, I'm listening, I'm attuned with you, I'm checking in with you, and I'm giving you what you need, so to speak.
Interesting. Do you think that a lot of us ignore our bodies?
I think a lot of us ignore our bodies, and I always say to people in my sessions, like, you're not even breathing right now. Like, slow down and take a breath, right? Like there's so many of my clients, I'm like, you don't breathe enough. You're just holding your breath and you're talking until you can't talk anymore. And then you'll take a quick breath and then you'll keep going and going and going. And it's like, pause, take a second, take a breath, and then, continue the conversation. So yeah, I think we ignore a lot of things.
I want to jump in on that taking a breath. I get it. I've done it. Like this is going to sound ridiculous, but there was one time a friend of mine was working on my deck, right? And we just got into a conversation. I'm like, I'm really tired lately. Yeah, me too. I don't know, but I'm eating, I'm sleeping. I don't know what the deal is. The more we talked about it, the more we figured out between the two of us that we were just taking shallow breaths. And the more I look into it, in our culture here, we do, where if you look at Asian countries, they're deep breathers.
Oh yeah.
And they're much more relaxed. They have less health issues, all of that. So yeah, there's something to be said that you need to be mindful of your breathing, even something as simple, uh, because I think we've even talked about before, when you're having challenges, those deep breaths, of course, it's a cliche. Take a deep breath, you'll be better. It works. It's
Oh yeah.
scientifically proven to reset, what is it, your parasympathetic nerve system?
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep. And I think
Yep.
too, like we're preventing oxygen from getting to our brain when we're not giving, when we're not taking big enough breaths, and like take that as like a fundamental level. Like, all right, our brain needs oxygen. Like we need to
Yeah,
breathe more, and we just need to be aware of it. A lot of it, I
totally.
think, is awareness.
Yep. Yep. 100%. And just before we move further into these tools, I met with an energy practitioner over the weekend, and this is going granular, but she is in tune with this kind of stuff and even said, I want you to, and she had like, just a wand or whatever. You have an itch or something, put it on the itch. Everything means something. So if you have, and she was calling it out, and in the, I guess, hypnotherapy, it was a form of hypnotherapy. I'd be thinking about things and then I'd be, oh, I have an itch over here. Oh, that's a good one. And it meant something. She would say, oh, you know what that means? And she was right. Like
Right.
she was like, it's like she was reading my mind based on the things that
Your
were
body.
coming from our body. Right. Yeah. So
Yep.
everything means something. Don't
Yep.
ignore it.
No, and I think people feel silly like checking into their body, or at least when I like introduce this like concept to new clients, and I'm like, all right, well, what is your body saying? What does your body need? And people are like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
well, our body really is the temple, and it tries to give us signals of what it needs. It tries to tell us like a message. It's just up to us if we want to listen to it or not.
Right. Well, then what happens uh down the road? You ignore your body and then you have health issues.
Right.
Yeah, it's telling, it's talking. So other tools that we can utilize to help us get through a lot.
So I think journaling is another one
Mm,
that I recommend a ton to people. And I always tell people like pick a time to journal, pick a space to journal in, and don't journal for no more than like 5 to 7 minutes at sitting when you do it. Because I have like two different types of people when I first tell them about journaling. First type of person is like they will sit there for like 2, 3 hours and journal about their total life. And it's like, well, that's not the point of it. That's too much and that's triggering in and of itself. So we don't want to do that.
mm,
Or we have other people who it's like, Dear Diary, I ate bread for breakfast and I had salad for lunch and I had this for dinner. And it's like, nope, that's not necessarily the purpose of it either. When it comes to trauma, when it comes to journaling, it's a lot of experiences that people have been through. We've never given words to the experience. The part of healing is to start labeling that experience and start give it words and start to pair emotions with those words. And it allows us to take ownership of that narrative. It allows us to take ownership of that experience.
is that also what some practitioners will do, where it's they'll apply a color? They'll say, what are you feeling? What color is that? If that helps you, just so that you have some kind of a reference point.
Yep. Yep. People will give colors to it. They'll give shapes to it. They'll do textures to it. It's like, if someone says like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. Okay. Where are you feeling the anxiety in your body? I feel it in my gut. Okay. What does it feel like? What color does it look like? How big is it? How intense is it? Yep. It's the exact same thing.
Hmm. And the journaling thing for me, I don't journal. I really should do two different types of journals. There's the gratitude journal, which I did this morning.
Yes.
It took me all of maybe 15 seconds, if that.
Yep.
As soon as I woke up, I had a couple of things I knew what I wanted to write down. Um, yeah, and I'm walking to the shower. I'm like, oh, all right, I got to turn around, go back, and pull out the journal and write in it.
Yep.
I should write just a thought journal, for one reason, maybe just to see the thoughts, but also to look back on it years later.
Yeah.
Because I did that way back. I wasn't dedicated to it. I would every once in a while write some stuff down, but even the stuff I wrote down, I'd look back and I'm like, whoa, wow, that happened. Whoa, you moved past that. Wow, that's kind of cool. You know, and what does it take? Again, to your point, spend 10 minutes, 5 minutes, three, whatever it is. Just
Right.
put it down on paper. And then, of course, there's also, and it's proven scientifically, the mind hand-pen connection
Yep.
of writing. Don't type it. You need to
Right.
physically write it. Big deal. It's a big deal.
Right. Totally agree. I'm happy you mentioned that point. A lot of times too is like we have so many thoughts that float around our brain and float around our mind, right? Like how many people, and maybe you're yourself, of like, I can't sleep at night. I have sleeping issues. I can't fall asleep or I can't stay asleep. And it's like, okay, well, we have 1,001 different thoughts going on all at the same time. Sometimes those thoughts need a place to live that is outside of our mind. Journaling also typically helps with that.
Or you can't organize those thoughts because it's like a ping pong ball bouncing around in your head, and you can't really identify certain things because for a moment in your mind you think, oh, well, I've got that going on now over here, now over here, now over. You got to put it down on paper. But to your point, I think it's a very important and a great one. Don't spend a lot of time because then it just becomes a chore and
Right.
that's not the goal.
No,
Totally not
right.
the goal. All right.
Exactly.
So I guess we call these trauma tools.
Yeah.
I guess it would be. Okay. What's next? What else can we work with to help us get through certain traumas?
So I think there's like general ones, right? Like I think everyone in society has heard of like coping skills. Like what are your coping skills to help you work through pain, whatever the pain is? Doesn't even need to be trauma. And that's like, exercise, eating well, sleeping well, nutrition, health, all of those things. And those things are all great and they help us all. Those to the side, I think everyone knows about those. Deeper when it comes to trauma, when it comes to like past the journaling point, is like a concept that I always talk about which is like forgiveness of the self and acceptance of the experience. So, and like this is something you could practice on your own, but like acceptance of the experience means like I am going to own that this thing has happened to me without judgment of myself. And once I own it and once I accept accountability for it, I could then forgive. And I know that's a big triggering word for people when it comes to trauma, like how would I forgive someone? But I could then forgive for the pain so I have the ability to move on. Because a lot of times we can't move on without a forgiveness piece, as hard as that is.
And it's huge.
Yeah.
It's a big one. We could do, full podcast on that or 3. And
right.
The forgiveness doesn't mean that you condone what somebody did. And you're not forgiving for their benefit. It's for your benefit. And I often find too, if somebody has done something to you and you're still connected to them and you just want to send that text, you just had a thought,
right.
Don't do it.
Right.
Sit on it. Even 48 hours, just don't do it. And I know you want to, and it feels good in the moment. Like just getting it's like writing it down. Now you're texting it or whatever, sending an email or making a phone call and just, chewing somebody. They don't care. They've already moved on. It's I hate to say it's pointless. It is.
No, but it is because it makes you feel worse after you do it as well, right? Because like we always have an expectation of like what type of response we're going to get. We never get the response that we're looking for. And then we're like, shit, why did I send that? Why did I do that? Why did I say that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then we're sitting with that guilt.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Just take the time. I've done it myself. It's like you just pause. All right. In those situations, let's go there. We're here now. You're having those thoughts. It's somebody else. We've identified, don't send that text, don't send that email, don't pick up the phone. What do you do?
So if you don't want to write about it, but you feel like you have to do something with it, exercise is great to release emotions and to release, because it gives you endorphins, obviously, when you exercise. So I always tell people, like, get some physical movement in, even if you can't make it to the gym or go for a long walk, like do jumping jacks, dance for 5 minutes, just get some type of movement to get the emotion moving through your body. So movement is one option. Another option too is, and I always give a caveat when I talk about this, but is talk to a loved one, a social support that you have that will not make it worse for you. And I know our loved ones and our social supports mean want the best for us and they mean well, but sometimes they tell us things that are not helpful or not beneficial or not what we need to hear in that moment. So if you're looking for a social support during something like this, I always say, like, be careful with who you choose. Make sure you choose someone who you know you're going to get support back. That's unconditional, not that comes with a judgment. And
because they care about you, many times they're just going to tell you what you want to hear. They're just going to feed into, instead of and it's coming from a good place, but instead of them directing you in another way, like we're talking today, they're just gonna, yeah, you're right. They are insert words. Then you're right. Not gonna get you anywhere. It's gonna feel good again in the moment, but it's gonna fall short.
Right. Right. Or it's the opposite of like, oh, but you're fine. Don't worry about it. It's
Oh
no
yeah.
big deal. Right. Like how invalid it's like when you I always read the thing. It's like when you're talking to someone who's angry or when you're talking to someone who's upset and telling them like, oh, just don't worry about it. It's like, oh, thanks so much. I just won't worry about it anymore and everything's fine. Right. Like I think people just sometimes don't know what to say too. So they just say anything just to attempt to make it better, but it doesn't always work.
To your point about the exercise, I'll share this in the session that I had with somebody over the weekend. It wasn't even about releasing, but it ties into it. She had me push up against a wall. She was just throwing different things out, just like push up against the wall, where you're taking a stance where you're trying to push that wall in or door, whatever it is, and it helps release. And I've been to retreats before where to let out the emotion and the angst I just showed up. I had no idea what we were doing at this event. um it's just picture a room with a lot of men and all the things that they've been through and them exploding and being allowed to, and other men holding them back.
Mm,
Whoa.
yeah.
Like
That's
literally
powerful.
one guy, 10 guys holding him back, like just keep pushing shit. And you're like, your brain went,
Right.
because guys aren't supposed to be emotional. So it's like, yep, hold it in, big boys don't cry, act like a man
Right.
since you were a kid. Um, but to let all that stuff out. So to your point, you have to do something physical to purge.
Right. Right.
Makes
Yeah,
big difference.
it definitely gets out emotions. And also like it gets out sometimes things that like we don't even have words to, right?
Yeah.
Like or, I didn't even know I was anxious or I didn't even know I was upset or I didn't know I was angry, whatever it is. And then afterwards you're like, oh wow, I feel relief. I feel so much better.
Or those things that you buried.
Yeah. Yeah, we're good at that.
Oh, once you perfect it, man, it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I call it, and here it is. I call it, listen for it. Whoops. That shut the camera off. I call that the emotional file cabinet. You just keep
Yep.
putting stuff in your brain, like in a file cabinet. Yeah, I'll get to that later. I'll get to that later. Eventually, there's so much in the file, you can't even close it anymore. There's papers flying all over the place.
Right.
But yeah, we are good at that. Once you see, now I've done it.
I know.
Cameron didn't like that. It was like, what are you
No,
doing?
it didn't.
Don't
No, it
do
does
that.
not support that idea.
Yeah, it does not. I'm sorry. I was just purging. Um, what else can we do in terms of trauma tools? What do you suggest?
Meditation is a huge one, and I know you've spoken about that, of how that helps, and I totally support anyone who's starting a meditation journey they have not started yet. I think that's great. Any type of breathing is helpful. And I think also like any type of like self-care of like doing things that you love to do, right? Like if you have nothing you love, and I tell people like if you have nothing in your life that you love to do, create something that you love and do it until you fall in love with it. Because we need to find joy, we need to find fulfillment out of something when we're going through so much pain.
I will share this. And somebody made me think about it. It was during this session over the weekend, like a hypnotherapy session. Things from my younger self came back, and they were things that I enjoyed doing when I was younger,
Mhm.
but the things that I look forward to. And I'm driven by music. I've been playing music on the radio since I was a kid. Not even kidding. First paycheck, still do it. But everything's connected to music. And one of those things was I saw a vision of me jogging on a high school track. I was in my 20s, and listening to music. Back then it was a Walkman. And I could even tell you the songs. And it was like,
Yeah,
I used to look forward to that. That
yeah,
was I just did, I was taking care of myself. I got to listen to different songs. And there was other examples as well, but they were from my past. So I bring that up in that maybe think back to some of those things that you did when you were younger that brought you joy and
right.
revisit them or a form of them. because we forget. Again, they get buried. Life happens. You got stuff going on, and then you're not even thinking about those things anymore. It's like, wow, those were good times back then. I felt,
Right.
even though if you're doing them by yourself, it felt good. It felt
Right.
good.
100%. Because it's fulfillment, right? It gives back to your soul. It gives you something to look forward to. It gives you something that you enjoy, and like in very independent way, right? Like for you, it's like running on a track, listening to music. Like that's just for yourself. It doesn't help anyone else. It doesn't serve anyone else. It's just for you. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what we want.
Oh man, I don't do it anymore. But now that I'm thinking about it, I would start running backwards. That would be it's such in a jam with the music. I'd be like, go back the other way, and then go back the other way. Um, you said look forward to. Is it okay to have something to look forward to like move you forward, like the carrot in front of the horse to keep the horse going forward? Is that healthy?
100%. I think we all do. Think about like vacations. Why are vacations so great? Like, yeah, they're great because you check out of life for a little while, but they're also great because it's something to look forward to, right? It's like, oh, I know I'm going away in 2 months. Okay, I have 2 months to get myself, it's a place in the future. It's not keeping you stuck in the exact moment. And I think a lot of us feel like we will get stuck in this exact moment and we'll never move forward and we'll never get out of it, right? That I think 100% having something to look forward to definitely helps.
And it's goals, like the vacation thing. I'm totally on your
Yeah.
page. Even if it's 2 months away, you're thinking about it and you're getting closer to it by getting life done. I have somebody I'm very close to that's having surgery this week. Kind of big surgery. So she doesn't like her job. She is taking time off because of the surgery. So for the past month, she goes, I just got to get to Thursday. I just got to get to Thursday
Yep.
to get a break and, potentially maybe look for another job during that downtime.
Right.
But you can detect the total difference in her because
100%.
she's getting to the finish line of that chapter, so to speak. And her goal was to get there, and not to get stressed out by all the stuff going on, the traumas from work, and there can be traumas at work and all of that. Interesting. A lot of this stuff is simple, but we don't know it until we know it or speak to somebody like you.
Yeah, I think we think of like the big things, right? Like when we think of healing, we think of like big things like go on medication, go to a therapist, go to a counselor, go, all like the huge things that like, yeah, they help some people, they help a ton of people even, but it's not the end all be all to healing.
And there's nothing wrong with those things. They have a purpose, but imagine if you didn't need that medication because you did some other healing. And what does medication do? It just takes care of the symptoms, doesn't go to the root of the situation. Right. How do we find you, Jessica? How do we connect? Maybe just even start the conversation to heal.
So they could find me on social media, Unleash Potential Life Coaching and Counseling. You could also go to my website, www.unleashpotentiallifecoaching.com. And of course, you could just text me, reach out. I do a free consult with anyone who calls me to see if we're a good fit.
Always great talking with you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And learn stuff. Or it even backs up what many of us think or wonder, is that really going to make a difference? Yes, if you use some of those tools, it's going to make a difference. Appreciate you, and we'll talk next time. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Homes for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.